Today's guest is a master of transformation, not just in theory, but in practice. Mark Fournier is a three-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, a best-selling author, a certified psychotherapist, philanthropist, and creator of some of the most innovative coaching tools of our time. But more than any title or trophy, Mark is a man on a mission to help people become the most authentic, powerful version of themselves. He's the founder of Limitless University, the Center of Empowerment, Do Good Hero Support Network, and the visionary behind OmniCoach, the world's first fully AI-powered life and business coach. With a background that bridges filmmaking, peak performance training, and cognitive behavioral therapy, Mark doesn't just help people change, he helps them evolve. His work is equal parts science and soul. Whether he's coaching entrepreneurs, writing books, or designing systems for personal mastery, Mark brings the same energy. Clear-eyed compassion, radical accountability, and a belief that our highest potential isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Today, we're diving into the turning points that shaped his journey, the breakthroughs, the burnouts, and the big realizations that led to being limitless. Isn't just about doing everything, it's about becoming who you're meant to be all along. Mark Fournier, welcome to The Moment It Clicked.
Kris, wow, I've got goosebumps. That is the best bio. I wish I had written all of that. That was really beautifully stated. You've taken some of my positions and some of my missions, and you've taken them to another level in terms of expressing what's in my heart and my intention. And I can't wait to get a transcript of that introduction and you know, the brief conversation we had before we started this just told me right off the bat that you're somebody I will truly enjoy interacting with during this
Thank you. That means
wonderful exploration, because I could tell you are an enlightened being and a quantum brother. So I'm really eager to have this adventure with you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Like, I put a lot into doing research for all the guests. I stay up till 2 a.m. just making notes and then doing prep all the way up until 1 minute before, just to make sure everything's just right when it comes out of my mouth. And I hope that all these questions land on you and just take this to another level.
I can't wait. This will be fun.
Right. Amazing. So, Mark, before all the personal mastery and coaching, who were you growing up? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, wonderful question. I was my folks were divorced when I was 4. My father was an ex-Marine, World War II, had a dozen shock treatments, severe PTSD. And in those days, they didn't even have a word for PTSD. So it was basically, they just treated it with alcohol. These guys just anesthetized themselves. He always had a drink in his hand to just kind of keep the edge off. And so they end up getting divorced when I was 4. And my mom was 2 jobs. She was a hairdresser. She was working days and nights. And it was pretty tough. And one thing that's really stood out is she was she was the first enlightened being that I was ever exposed to. This is a woman with just a high school education and then cosmetology school, but she had an insatiable appetite for, in some cases, for all things metaphysical. She was highly curious, but certainly she was curious about the human condition, about the nature of reality, about the nature of consciousness. This is 60, 70 years ago. I'm almost 70, so this was before I was born. And so I didn't realize how unique and unusual it was to have a mother who was raised in a Baptist household, who was reading the Quran, who was reading anything she could get her hands on. Eastern philosophies were one of her greatest things. There was a book called A Waspy, and it was like 5,000 pages long, and she just had this voracious appetite. So fast forwarding, one thing that she didn't seem to master was the art of picking husbands, because she then married another fellow who turned out to be a severe binge drinker, severe alcoholic. And they married when I was 10, and he was extremely abusive, And when she was getting ready to leave him, within a year or two, she ended up with breast cancer. Now, this is, again, 50 years ago. That was like a death sentence in those days. And she needed the insurance, so she couldn't leave him. So she did something interesting, and that was change my life number one. She put in my hands for my 12th birthday 3 items. She gave me Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and a record album by a fellow named Earl Nightingale called The Strangest Secret. And I still have that album. And I started reading these books and listening to this, and I was being exposed to things that, especially back then, 12-year-olds weren't exposed to this kind of thinking. And as I was doing this, I started looking on my own, and I came across a quote, again, 12 years old, from an ancient philosopher named Epictetus. And he's not as popular as Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, but this man was ahead of his time by just eons. And he had one simple quote, which would be so easy to just listen to it and go, oh, that's nice. But it sunk in so deeply, and I'm setting you up because I want you to appreciate the magnitude of this insight. And it was, people are not disturbed by the things that happen to them, but rather by their opinion of the things that happen. And over time, I came to realize their opinion, that was synonymous with the lens through which they see the world, the mindset, their perceptions, the programs, and so on. And these all kind of fall in the same category. But this concept at the age of 12, being exposed to the idea that, so it's not about what's out there. That's just a backdrop. That's not the world. That's just a platform upon which we build our world. And there's a quote from Wallace Stevens, it's, we live in the mind. And as I started to look into what does that really mean? And ultimately, if you put enough thought and effort into this, you'll come to realize that this is true, that what's happening in the world around us is little more than an influence. It's just a thing. And you know that it's not like we're looking at reality for what it truly is, facts for what they truly are, because almost anything I ask you, your answer will be, it depends. For instance, is rain good or bad? Well, it depends. Right. Yeah. Is this right? Is this good? Is this bad? In fact, Shakespeare wrote, nothing is right nor wrong, but thinking makes it so. So it keeps coming back to the same principle that there's this world around us, and we have the ability to interpret it in any way that serves us. Now, a lot of people think, well, wait a minute. What are you telling me I'm supposed to do with all of this? And I say, well, so imagine that reality is nothing more than the stories, thoughts and stories that you believe. Just the stories that you accept. You embrace and accept those, and that's your reality. And you could say, what do you mean, my reality? And I'd say that's because there are 8 billion people, 8 billion realities, not counting all the other sentient creatures on this planet, whales and dolphin and so on with their realities. And now octopuses, I found out it's not octopi.
Well, it's not octopi. I've been saying octopi for the longest time.
So was I. And someone corrected me one day, and I was like, no way, it's octopi. It can't be octopuses. And they were like, and there it was. I thought, well, I'll be darned. So at that moment, I had a tectonic shift from just being another kid who loved sports and loved to play and soccer and kickball to now a tween and teenager who was grasping the possibility that I had virtually limitless control over the quality of my life, over my life experience, which in my mom's case, she was just trying to help me survive being married to this 6'3", 280-pound abusive alcoholic, and trying to help me keep my wits about me so I could figure out how to navigate that life, because she couldn't afford to leave. And so that set me off on a path through my teens and into my early 20s, where I was, for my own sake, it didn't occur to me at the time that I was going to use this to raise human consciousness or change the lives of others with any of this. This was just for me, because while that was happening, I was going to be the next Frank Lloyd Wright. I was going to be a professional soccer player. I was going to be a filmmaker. I had all these limitless pursuits. And so as I did that, I was simultaneously learning more and more about positive psychology and just understanding the mind and the human condition. And so they started developing simultaneously. So that would be what I would call my first major shift. And there were others, but I'm going to stop for a minute because I'm just eager to hear
I love where you're going. And I did have a follow-up question, but what you kept saying was interesting. So I was like, okay, I got to keep the ball rolling. So I want to get your thoughts on one thing. So there's some people who say, I'm very objective. I look at the facts. And then there's other people you interpret the facts. What would you say to someone who says, objectively, I'm the worst at this in my peer group. I'm just objectively not as good at them as this thing. And do you feel like saying that statement in your head affects your performance, or should you be actively reshaping that in order to affect your performance?
Thank you for bringing this back to useful takeaways for our listening audience. So it's a great question. Think of it this way. So you have your prefrontal cortex, your conscious, controlling, and intellectual mind that is capable of saying anything you want it to say. I mean, it can think of something and it can make a decision. And then you have your subconscious, which is running the show. That's your operating system. And that's the thing think nothing is right or wrong to the subconscious, but thinking makes it so. The prefrontal cortex tells the subconscious, this is how it is. And then the subconscious job is to enact the program. It's to carry out the program. And so if you are programming yourself with self-talk by saying, I suck at this, I don't have an aptitude for that, your subconscious will be like, oh, okay. And it will start looking for proof that that's true, because it wants to fortify whatever position you give it. And as Goethe wrote, we see what we're looking for. If you say, I'm terrible at math, you'll start to notice evidence of things that you didn't quite figure out or quite understand. But that doesn't mean that if you're 6'8" and you say I'm super short, that your subconscious is going to be able to quite bridge that gap, because there'll be too much evidence to the contrary, so much evidence that you're not super short, or vice versa, that your brain will go into conflict. But most of these things are really subtle shifts, whether I'm good at something or not. And ultimately, the subconscious will do everything in its power to carry out whatever you tell yourself, whatever fact, whatever you call a fact, whatever belief system you allow or embrace. Most of our belief systems, by the way, are just allowed. It's just the media, our parents, somebody told us something and we just accepted it, and it became our new belief system because we don't question, which is where Einstein came in. Question everything, every belief you have, because your beliefs are driving your life. So hopefully we're on the same page there, but I've seen evidence that
absolutely.
You are who you say you are.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that there's a difference between the event and how you interpret the event. And I'm not sure if you ever went to a landmark seminar or anything like that, but that was one of the big takeaways.
I became a landmark instructor about
Fantastic.
30 or 40 years ago. Yeah, it's probably going on 40 years. So, been through it all. That was just one piece of the journey. I'm going to turn up the speaker volume just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and say something.
So when you were a landmark seminar instructor, how did that happen? Because I did a lot of research. I didn't come across that.
Oh, yeah. It's because I didn't want to be pigeonholed. As I am also, I'm trained, I'm not only a cognitive behavioral therapist, but I'm also trained to facilitate. I can train people in that therapy, but also NLP. So my idea was back to Bruce Lee, and everyone I didn't bring him up because you're Asian, in case you're going, oh, he's trying to tie it all together. It's Bruce Lee.
Well, I mean, I am Asian, and you know, I like to make. I'm the one who points out that I'm Asian the most. You know, I think it's just a funny subject. Like, well, yeah, I'm Asian, bro.
Yeah, well, and you know, the funny thing is, I mean, most of the world population is Asian, so, okay.
It's funny because, like, I was born in Canada, so when I'm in Canada, I'm Asian, and when I'm in Asia, I'm Canadian. So it's sort of funny. Like,
Yeah.
and also over there, like when you're talking about perception, over here, I'm 5'10". I'm fairly average tall. Like, it's fine. Like, but when I'm over there, I may as well be 6'3". Like, I
Isn't
may
that
as well
great?
be 6'3" over there. It's kind of cool.
You know what? Now, there is another perfect example of relativity, everything being relative. In fact, when they asked Einstein to explain what is relativity, he said, well, take a young man and set him next to a pretty girl, and an hour will seem like a minute. But put him on a hot stove, and a minute will seem like an hour. He said, that's relativity. See, nothing means anything until you compare it to something. Am I tall or am I short? In some place, I'm the world's tallest midget, or I'm the world's shortest giant at 6'2", right? So so anyhow, going back to, so Bruce Lee, what most people don't understand who know who he is, I felt really great about him as a martial artist was he broke out of the standard, the norm of you pick a discipline, your kung fu or hapkido or judo. You pick one and you master it. And he said, well, that's ridiculous. There's no one perfect discipline. This one's better at this one works better for that. And so he said, I'm going to master them all. And I'll use whichever one makes the most sense under the circumstances. And at first, that was just, heresy. But he went ahead with it, and of course, then they're saying, oh my gosh, he's the greatest martial artist who ever lived. And I thought, what if I did that in the world of psychodynamics, in the world of the human psyche and so on? So I started studying anything I could get my hands on. So yeah, with Landmark, I went through, of course, the forum, and then there are other courses after that most people don't know about, and the mastery courses, and you can keep going. And I mean, still have it somewhere. The training book, it's like this thick of all the things you have to go through to become a trainer. I didn't want to be a Landmark trainer. I wanted to be capable of being one. I wanted to learn the process. And so once I was qualified to start leading my own 2-day Landmark, which is where you start leading Landmark groups. Most people don't know that it goes past the forum. They don't know. Landmark is the big company. The forum is the 2-day event. So once I was able to do it and qualified, I moved on. I was like, okay, got that. Next. So
what was that shift like? How are you thinking and feeling about that? Like, what did you move on to? You're just doing your own events, or?
Well, there was, oh my gosh, there's so many trainings. Silva Mind Control. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I went through all the Silva Mind Control training. Actually, that was the first one. I was 14 years old. And my mom took me to this thing, and it lasted like 10 days of intensive training, day and night and day and night. And it was Silva Mind Control. So I was learning about these principles at that age on that level. And so because I didn't really catalog it in my mind in terms of a shift from each training between one to the next, it kind of blurs together for me. It was more like sometimes they were courses, training. Sometimes they were books, or and you name the person back in the day, the Tony Robbins and so on. But I wasn't just studying their stuff. I was producing their infomercials because I also had my television and film production company, and so I was in on it from the very beginning. And so I'm hanging out with these guys, the Jim Rohns and the Robbins, and seeing how they lived in real life. Not what did they teach and preach, but what did they actually do? How did they really manifest this in their own life? And in some cases, I'd say, they're not walking their talk, man. There's something going on here.
Okay, I was about to ask. I was like, is there any like juicy gossip there? Like, is there something we could take away? And okay, so You don't need to
Yeah.
name names unless you.
Now, that would probably
But
come back to haunt me at the point
yeah.
when somebody figured out something I did.
But like, what is the difference between how they live their life and what they preach? What was the sort of was there an
Most
energetic difference? Was it tangible?
Yeah, most of the time, what I've seen is certainly in relationships. I've seen a lot of these folks are teaching, and not saying that he was one of them, but John Gray, who wrote "Women Are from Mars" or "Venus, Men Are from Mars." He and I used to work together, and we did seminars together and did coaching, and so I mean, again, I've been on the inside of all of these. And he was married to Barbara DeAngelis, and who's also a trainer. But most of these folks have been married 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Not saying that's always a bad thing, because probably my greatest lessons came through difficult times, hitting rock bottom, through doing things wrong before I figured out what was right. I used to teach a cinema class, and one of the best ways to teach a cinema student great direction and cinematography was to send them to really bad movies. It's easier to understand by watching what you shouldn't do, because finding a perfect movie and saying do what they did, they were like, it's invisible. Oh, I don't know what they did. But man, you can learn from the opposite, just like in people. If you find a truly enlightened being, I had a chance to interview the Dalai Lama. This is the real deal. Now, I got to see this guy behind the scenes when nobody's watching. You know, when they say character is what you do when nobody's watching, right? And how I define integrity is being who you say you are. Everybody thinks integrity means that's like, oh, that means you're good. No, it just means that you are who you. If I'm a bank robber and I say, hey, everybody, I'm a bank robber and I'm going to figure out how to rob your bank, and I go ahead and follow through, I've got integrity. If a guy says to a girl and he's dating her, listen, I can't be monogamous, I date lots of women, just want you to know, that's integrity. But very few people truly have it. What they have is how they want you to see them versus who they really are. And that's endemic in this industry. And so that's what I recognized was a lack of integrity, a lack of follow through. They understood the principles, they taught the principles, made money off of doing so, but they weren't mastering the principles. They'd learned well enough to speak the words, but when it came to their own lives, they allowed ego to take control and engage, and they allowed all sorts of other challenges that I thought, wow, I don't want to be that. So again, by watching what didn't work, I knew what I didn't want. I got to say, I want to be that guy where you can talk to my kids or talk to my life partner, Mary, and when nobody's there, and whisper, what's this guy really like? And have them say, he's the most amazing person I've ever known. I thought, now, how can I be that guy to live that life? By the way, do you want me to call her in?
How do you get to that point? How do you become the person who is who they say they are? Because even if the great teachers, don't always practice what they preach, how do you actually step into that and be that in every single moment of the day? Is there a perfect method, or is it just individualized? Like, there's some people who are just truly great, like a Kobe Bryant. He really embodied what he was talking about, and he would show up hours early to practice or to interviews, and then just be fully prepared for everything. Like, is there a method, or is it?
Yeah, I love the question, and I love that you brought up Kobe Bryant, because it would be easy to see that guy before he was showing up early for everything, always, all the time, and say that's a talented guy. I'm sure he was a hell of a basketball player when he was 10 or 11 or 12. So you have two different things going on. One, you have a person who has a gift. I could say that I may have a gift when it comes to understanding psychology on a quantum level, and understanding the nature of reality and consciousness. It comes easily to me. However, just as Kobe Bryant, he was tall, he was athletic, some things came easily, but nobody told him, you have to get up at 4 o'clock every morning and go shoot 1,000 baskets every single day before you can get on with your day. That was the next level. So what I've seen is people within this industry practicing what they preach to some degree. Some do it 10%, some do it 90%. I've never seen anyone do it 100%. If so, it would maybe be the Dalai Lama. I don't do it 100%. I teach all about ego, recognizing when it's engaged and learning how to release it. And they say, so you've like got this whole, you could do like books and seminars on ego. I go, of course. So you don't have like any ego issues. And I go, I have an ego. Everyone has it. It's just that my ego doesn't engage easily. And when it does, I can turn it off very quickly. But I still have moments. I have a thing I call it being on the bright train or the dark train. And the dark train is when your ego's engaged and you're looking at the world through this, these dark lenses. And they say, so you never get on the dark train? I go, yes, just not very often, and I don't stay there. And I'm not looking for perfection because I don't know if it's possible in the human condition, but one of the things I teach my clients right off the bat in terms of self-acceptance is I'm not perfect. So I'm going to start out with this concept that I'm okay. I'm not perfect. No one is, and that's okay. I'm doing my best to be my best, and that's enough. And I say it to myself. So yeah, I've never seen anyone living these principles always all the time, 100%. But certainly the difference between 90% and 10, that's significant. So I'm just always trying to get to, how much further. So in the end, the bottom line is commitment. If you've committed to this, just like Kobe Bryant, it was commitment. He committed to being the best basketball player that he was capable of being. And the only way he would know what that looked like would be if he shot 1,000 baskets a day to find out, well, how far could I go? And so I wound up doing the same thing and asking, how far can I go? How deeply can I understand consciousness? To what degree and on what level? And to what degree can I incorporate it into my life? How far can I take it? And I don't know the answer because I just take it a little bit farther every day. And I don't know how far I'll take it before I cross over.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to take this back to something you just said. Basically, the idea that I'm not perfect and I'm going to make mistakes. I've met some people who say things like, oh yeah, I'm going to make mistakes and I'm probably going to make them again because God will forgive me and it doesn't matter anyways. So I'm just going to, I'm going to keep doing the same thing and, everything will turn out okay in the end because God will forgive me. I've met people like that and it drives me crazy because it doesn't abdicate you from responsibility. It means that you should try better or learn something from the experience. What do you think of someone who keeps repeatedly making the same mistake or just acknowledges that they're not perfect and
uses it as a scapegoat?
Yeah, use it as a scapegoat, or they just sort of brush things off casually because they're like, it'll get better eventually. They almost procrastinate their own growth.
Oh my! You ask awesome questions. I'm going to turn on my overhead fan because when they turned off all the power just before this call to do some work in the other room, apparently they didn't turn the air conditioner back on. And I'm in Arizona, and it hit 100 yesterday. So it's starting to warm up just a little bit right now, and I'm going, what the heck? Oh, they didn't turn on the air. All right, so back to your awesome question. So yeah, there is a fine line between self-acceptance and personal growth and development. Because I teach everything always works out one way or another. It works out, not necessarily the way you planned, but it all works out. Kind of like the idea things don't happen to us, they happen for us. Whatever it is, there's something wonderful in all of it. And I also teach that my definition of failure is the absence of growth. So if I didn't grow, if I didn't learn anything, well, I guess I will feel a little bit more failure-ish if I didn't learn anything from it. And so imagine the version where you say, and that God will forgive me. We can go universal with that because who's God, right? Well, for one person, it's a guy wearing sandals with a big white beard. For somebody else, I am God. For somebody else, it's a universal consciousness. And but it doesn't matter who that entity is. Let's say that that entity will forgive you. The next question is, and what's your point? Does it serve you to keep doing the same thing over and over and not growing and not learning or developing, not improving, and never feeling like there's anything beyond what is? Isn't that a bit apathetic? Isn't that nihilistic? I mean, most of my one-on-one coaching clients, in fact, they're all high net worth entrepreneurs and executives worth tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And so here I'm teaching these guys that you already have everything you need. Food, shelter, water, and oxygen, classic Maslow. It's like, you have everything you need. And when they start, because they're sometimes very anxious, and I'm saying, what are you so worried about? And it's like, well, I need to get this done, and I need that, and I go, no, you don't. Those are things you'd like to do, but you don't need to. When you say I need to, it triggers your amygdala. Your whole limbic system, your basal ganglia lights up because we're here to get what we need. Oxygen, you take my oxygen, and I'm going to thrash and scream and do whatever it takes to get that back. So as I get them to a place of peace and calm, saying, I have everything I need, they always end up going, well, wait a minute. Once I've fully accepted that, what's the point of even getting out of bed? I mean, I already have everything I need. I've got a bank account full of money, so what's the point? And I say, for fun, to make it exciting. I mean, what's left is, well, I'm going to be on this planet for another 10, 50, 80 years, whatever it is. Well, I want to have a great time. I mean, who goes on a vacation and they go out for one restaurant and they have a great meal and then they're going to spend the rest of the week sitting in their room? Because, well, they'll bring room service. You don't have to go anywhere. That's no fun. So once you start to say, oh, so it's an adventure. It's so that I can have them as this great experience called life. So I can make the most of my life. Well, that takes all the pain and frustration and stress out of it when it's like, well, I'm doing this for fun and excitement. These podcasts, I don't get paid to do this, so why am I doing it? Well, why not? I have more fun doing this than I would the dishes. I'd rather get somebody else to do the dishes, and I can sit here and talk about the things that I really care about. So this is where I love to take those folks and just say, and ask, does it serve you to believe that nothing you do matters? How does that make you feel? Does it make you excited and passionate and want to jump up and go do it again if it doesn't even matter? It matters if you say so. It matters if you are doing something with it and so on. So I'll stop and see if that's taking us down the path that you were
honestly,
hoping to track.
I was vibing with the whole thing, and then it almost made me forget my next question.
I apologize. I have a tendency to do that to people.
No problem. Honestly, I think this is going to be it's already been an amazing interview, and then it just it just keeps bringing up new thoughts and insights. Because my next question was actually, so you meet up with these founders and CEOs worth tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and there always seems to be a sense of urgency, and almost like a burning desire to get something done. Do you think that drove their success up to a certain point, or was it, or is joy the highest form of growth that we can have? Because we can all be at different levels. Like, let's say that we're all the way down in the gutter and we're just totally in despair, totally hopeless. Maybe a slightly better motivation is you're angry and then you solve problems through anger and you get things done because you're like, I'm going to get revenge, or I'll show them. And the next is well, I mean, I'm surviving. Things are okay. And then all the way up at the top is full joy, expression, and living a limitless life. Do you think just having a sense of urgency was limiting, or do you think it was essential for their success?
Great question. And the term I use beyond joy, because joy doesn't necessarily mean fulfillment. Fulfillment is a different form of positive expression or experience. I would say, probably the best word I could come up would be bliss. Bliss could be, because bliss is, it's happiness or joy, it's fulfillment, it's peace of mind. It can be it can be excitement or passion. It's just, I'm in this blissful state, right? In some cases, the more pedestrian version of that would be to be in flow. And being in flow usually happens when we are at the edge of our comfort zone, just at the edge, doing something that we've got some kind of an aptitude for. So I'm good at this, but I'm going to take it even beyond my capabilities, and I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to hang it out there doing this thing that I have a skill at, and in that moment, we get to slip into flow. And flow, you're there when an hour seems like 5 minutes. And any time you've been like, I'm just so into this thing, and all of a sudden they're like, come on in. Like even as a kid, you're out playing baseball or kickball or something. Or of course, Canadian. I played hockey up until just a few years ago. So you're out there on the ice skating, and they're like, come in for dinner. And you're like, I just came out. You've been out there for 4 hours. No, I've only... And so we can experience that in all sorts of areas and at every level. But going back to your this urgency factor, what I found, the consistency among the highly successful in any field. It doesn't have to be just wealth building. It can be that kid who wins the national spelling bee. Yeah, I mean, the countless hours they spent learning about not just memorizing words, but learning all the different, diphthong and the differences between languages. And I mean, it's intense. Or being the world's greatest flute player, or you name it. If you're the best or if you're a GOAT, you were driven. That sense of urgency is more like there's only so much time to get from here to here. I mean, am I even going to live long enough? Or in some areas, like in athletics and sports, you typically only have a small window. You've got about 20 years. And then you're too old to play that sport anymore. And so they're fully aware that there's a time limit to accomplish whatever this extraordinary goal is. For the wealthy, they're driven a little bit differently, but it's going to always come back to one huge factor, and that is what's behind all of it. Is it the desire for bliss? Most people don't even know what that is. Is it just trying to be happy or trying to be wealthy? And I finally realized over the course of, I've been doing this as a professional for about 50 years now. And I kept asking, what's beneath that? What's before that? Just like all super successful people, what do they all have in common? Perseverance. They just don't quit. They just keep going and going. But what's before that? What drives perseverance? Well, then I realized it's commitment. If you're deeply committed, if you are committed enough, the perseverance will happen on its own. Okay, what drives commitment? Is there anything before that? And I realized it was belief. The people who truly, honestly believe with all their heart and soul in something, that it's a possibility, it's easier for them to commit, which then drives perseverance. And so that's as far as I could take this one underlying current was, so the thoughts or stories and beliefs are what create a reality and drive our lives. But there was one other element. And I'll say the word, and it may not seem that big at first, and it is, we are driven to be validated. Validation, in other words, to be acknowledged, to be approved, accepted. So to be validated, well, why is that such a big deal? And if you think about it, first of all, genetically, if you were shunned by your village, cast out, that was a death sentence. One person back in the hunter-gatherer days could not hunt and gather and build shelter and defend against other tribes and wild animals and all the things that needed to be done. And so those who were socially adaptable and more capable of making friends, of being accepted and so on, are the ones who survived. The ones who weren't got thrown out, and their progeny died out with them because they didn't. So we are genetically predisposed to want the approval of others. And look at other mammals. Look at canines. Look at a dog. There's the alpha, and then there's all the beta, and there's a hierarchy of them. There's the alpha's best friend. He's beta 1. And he's the best of all the betas at getting approval and acceptance, and so on down the line. Well, what I was wondering, so is it just genetic? And then I realized, no. Your parents did this to you. And when you have kids, you do this to them. And what is it? Well, as a parent, you only have three primary objectives. One is love them unconditionally. You'll probably be the only one who does. People go, oh no, my wife loves me unconditionally. And I go, really? Let her catch you in bed with her sister and her best friend. You'll find out she does not love you unconditionally. Maybe, if you're lucky, one of your two parents will not withhold love no matter what you do, and they'll love you unconditionally. So I say to parents, do this, because chances are no one else will in their life. The other two are keep them safe long enough to become viable adults, and finally teach them how to be viable adults. Well, by the time they're 18, 19, 20, they're out of the house, and all that's left is love them unconditionally. But the very first one is keep them safe. That's how it starts. So we teach our children, this is okay, this is not okay. It's not okay to cut your little sister's eyelashes with a chainsaw. It's okay to share your cookie with your little sister. It's not okay to play in the street. But we don't want to just be casual about it. We need to make sure that they really get it. So you catch them playing in the street, it's like, bad girl, bad boy. That's not okay. That's not okay. And there are consequences and punishment because we've got to protect them and drive it in. You give them a cookie, they share it with their sister, and you go, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm going to get you another cookie. Good boy, good boy. Well, we're being trained from the time we're like 6 months old. This feels horrible, bad, bad, bad. This feels great, good, good, good. So validation versus invalidation, and it is being programmed in on the deepest level of our consciousness, and then something really scary happens. Do they ever say to a 3-year-old, you know, you're old enough to decide whether or not it's okay to play with a chainsaw or play in the street? They're like, no, you're 3, you're an idiot. It's up to mommy and daddy or grandma and grandpa or the babysitter or your aunts and uncles, now the teacher, now the coach, and eventually the peers jump in. And so by the time we are in our late teens or early 20s, what we've been taught is A, I am on a subconscious level desperate to be validated, and B, it's not up to me whether I'm okay. It's up to everyone else. So on a both conscious and subconscious level, we now will spend the rest of our life doing things that we believe will get the world to tell us we're okay. And boy, we will not quit, because even if somebody validates us, well, they could change their mind in 5 or 10 minutes. They could change it tomorrow. You know what? I was wrong about you. Or if they do, well, there's still almost 8 billion other people who haven't done it. Best case scenario, you may get half the world to validate you. Well, that means there's 4 billion people saying that they don't approve of you. So we'll never get to the end of this unless we do one thing. And that is the magic thing that almost no one ever even understands, much less masters, is to self-validate. Which is why those words are so important. I'm okay. I'm not perfect. No one is. And that's okay. I'm doing my best to be my best, and that's enough. When you can own that, you have another tectonic shift. Is once you finally accept that we're not here to be perfect. We don't need to be. What's your point? What are you trying to prove? Because you'll never get there. Self-acceptance is a lot easier when you finally let go of that. And so that's something that happens even with the wealthy and the urgent, as I get them to the point of saying, hey guys, have you ever noticed what you thought once, if you could get to 10 million, you'd be there. Everything would be fine. You got there and you're like, oh man, I'm not feeling it. So then it was 20 million, then 50, then 100. You know why you'll never get to the other end of it is because you can't. No matter how much money you make, you're still waiting for the world to tell you, well, that's enough. But there's some other guy who's made 10 times what you've made. And you need to now start to accepting yourself for who you are without any of that. So I'll stop at that point and see where we are.
That might also feel like it's like when you realize, oh yeah, this guy's going to be infinitely richer than I am. That could almost feel invalidating to yourself as well. It's like, oh well, now you're comparing yourself to the outside world, and you're not giving yourself the internal validation that you would actually need to be happy and satisfied with your life.
Yeah, I always say compare down. See, we make the mistake of, we can't help but compare. Again, everything's relative. Compared to what? It depends. It's compared to this or that. But we compare our worst qualities to somebody else's best. I say, reverse it. That doesn't serve you. Compare what you are proud of and what you love about your life or love about yourself with somebody who has 10 times less. It's real easy to sit here and to feel good about how fortunate we are. I don't care who you are. If you live anywhere in the Western Hemisphere, you think about what's happening in Gaza, in Ukraine. You think about, I mean, at some point you can't help but say, "Oh man, how dare I complain about the fact that my air conditioners forgot to turn on the air." Oh my gosh, there are a lot of people out there who don't know what is air conditioning. I've never heard of that. Sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
No problem. So I just wanted to switch tracks for a few minutes and talk about your filmmaking era. So before you became known for growth and mastery, you were a filmmaker. What drew you to that in the first place?
I think part of it is I'm a writer and an artist. I was a photographer, designer, creator. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted, and so as an artist, somebody who loves to create, and you combine that with I am by nature a storyteller, if you haven't figured it out already. And so you combine the arts with storytelling, and you have filmmaking, because that's the perfect medium for telling stories in my mind. And so it just occurred to me that would be a lot of fun. And somewhere in there, I started realizing that it wasn't enough for me to know and understand this stuff. I needed to share it. I started thinking, how can I reach out to others? How can I share some of this? And could I use television film production as a way of doing that? In fact, it's not a coincidence that most of my productions in the long run and most of my awards, I think all 3 Emmys, were for creating things that helped create a better world, things that helped increase awareness around certain topics, increase funding, and things of that nature. And so you name the nonprofit, and I probably produced films about their topic, and I probably produced fundraising films and public service ads for them, and Make-A-Wish and Red Cross and Big Brothers and Sisters, and I mean, I could go on and on. It's pretty much anyone you can think of.
Did it ever feel like when you were doing filmmaking, at the moment, did it feel like it was the destination, or do you feel like it was a stepping stone to something larger?
Yeah, I'm so fortunate. Even though I am by nature one of those guys who really likes to accomplish things and get things done. I love to check off the box, and I love to climb to the top of that mountain and look around and plant my flag. I did learn at a very young age that the journey is still ultimately, it's got to be about the journey. Because especially if you're playing out there on the edge, you may not get to the mountain. You may choose to climb a mountain that can't be climbed, or certainly not within this lifetime. So I have thoroughly enjoyed the process all along the way, striving toward some kind of an outcome, but sometimes reaching it, sometimes exceeding it. In fact, I love to say that most people, it doesn't occur to them that a goal doubles as a limitation. When they say, well, I'm going to double my sales, I go, oh, so why do you only want to double them? Have you thought of increasing them by 10 times? I used to say add a 0 till Grant Cardone came along and it was 10x. But geez, 20 years before that, I was teaching that principle with add a 0. Now what would it look like? How would that change the course, the choices that you make? Because the way you go about doubling sales is going to be very different than the way you go about increasing them by 10 times. This time you can just work twice as hard, but you can't work 10 times as hard, because you'd have to work 20 hours or 40 hours a day. You need to
clone yourself in order to,
exactly.
To get to that point. You'd actually need 10 of yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm a journey guy all the way, making sure I'm loving the process. And there's times when there's times when we need to do something that's not fun. So I can do that for a little while. I've got a classic ADHD, and I'm good for about 20 minutes. There's a reason why I have a computer screen here and here and here and here, and I've got something up on each one of them, something different. And as soon as you and I get off this, I'll go do a different thing for about 20 minutes. But by the end of the day, I'll get all 5 things done. But I won't do each one at a time. I'll go back and forth in order to keep myself in this elevated state. And it does keep the energy up.
And so when you're doing your work today, were there any skills or mindsets that translate from the filmmaking days to what you do now?
Oh my God, yes. Are you kidding? Filmmaking, it is the quintessential microcosm of life. First of all, yes, art imitates life, but on a more beautiful level, I write, produce, and direct. I was a creator. I would come up with an idea, and I would create this expression. And while I was filming, if I didn't like the way it looked, I would change the script and I would rewrite it. And if I didn't like that, I would change this. And I might go ahead and feature, I might notice something that we hadn't seen before and say, oh my gosh, you guys look at the light. It's so perfect. Quick, move the cameras over here. And so all the while that I'm shooting, I'm asking, and how can I make it even better? What can I do about this? And now this film, we can look at it and go, yeah, but that's not real. That's just a thing that you're creating. And I go, that's your life. I mean, well, that's not real. Your life is nothing more than you, again, in your head. It's like the Matrix. You are experiencing this reality that you have created by the stories and beliefs that you allowed. And then I come along as a filmmaker and say, so if you went to a movie and you hated it, would you just sit there through the whole thing? Or would you get up and leave? Yeah, I'd probably get up and leave. Great, step one. What if you were the scriptwriter and the director? Well, I'd rewrite the script. I'd change the scene. I'd do this, I'd do that. Great, because that's your life. And so imagine having the ability to do that in your own life and say, how am I feeling? It's called metacognition, and it's being aware throughout the day of who you're being, of what stories am I allowing? How do I feel right now? Am I passionate, excited, exhilarated, or am I nihilistic, fatalistic? Am I depressed or dark? And when I look at the state I'm in, asking the question, how do I feel about this? Does this serve me? Do I want to be in this state? And if the answer is no, okay, then what stories and beliefs are behind this state, and how can I change them? How can I rewrite them and replace them with a story that's easily just as possible, just as viable? Then I look for proof that it's true, and now I up my belief until I'm feeling the way I'd like to. And people go, wait a minute, so you're just saying, just go through life creating all of these stories that make you happy and make you love your life? Well, that's just telling me to live in a fantasy world. And I smile and say, you already do. You just don't realize it, because you're living in a fantasy world that you did not create with intention. I'm telling you, replace the fantasy world that you're creating haphazardly or allowing others to create by just believing whatever they tell you with a fantasy world that you've created and have control over. Boy, if you can master that, that's a superpower. What could be more powerful than that?
It's almost like the difference between living in a dystopian fantasy and living in a happy,
utopian.
There's going to be challenging moments, but it's like one with a happy ending and where you're not miserable day to day.
It is. I'd go beyond almost. It is just like that. I would rather go to a utopian movie than a dystopian movie any day. And once in a while I'll watch them, like Blade Runner, and there are others where it's like, wow, that was really dark, but I don't like the way I felt when I left. How about let's go see a happy movie now? And I've come to realize that I'd rather live in a utopian world, so I create it to the best of my ability on a moment-by-moment basis through that metacognition. I'm constantly aware of thinking about my thoughts, paying attention to what I'm paying attention to, noticing what I'm noticing. And anyone can learn this. Anyone.
So talk to me a bit about OmniCoach, because as a human being, I can see how some people might feel a bit hesitant to get life coaching from an AI. What does it actually do?
Absolutely. And thank goodness I thought of that 30 years ago before AI was around. Because I came up with OmniCoach, 30 to 35 years ago. So that's why I was the first one to release it, because the moment ChatGPT 3 came out, Thanksgiving before last, it was like, finally, it's here. And I immediately called my team, called my app folks, and said, drop everything. I'm sending you a bunch of stuff over, and here's what I want you to do with it. The patent that we've applied for is different from anything that I've ever seen before. And I think that this is I'm self-proclaimed genius of it, is you're not being coached by AI. What? Yeah, it already occurred to me that I don't want to put something out there where a 13-year-old says, what's the best way to kill myself? And it says, well, arsenic is actually pretty painless and it's easy to get. And then I thought, I'm not going to take that risk because I don't know who AI is. I don't know what AI's character is. All I know is that it's an amalgamation of who knows what. So the way I use AI is, I thought, we don't need AI to tell you the answers to these questions. What I use AI for is to search the world of anyone who has ever shared any insights of any significance on the internet, going all the way back to Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and Lao Tzu, and of course Plato and Socrates, and anyhow, you get it. So the greatest minds that have ever lived, and I'm religious and otherwise, Jesus, and right up to today, right up to Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, I don't care. And so what happens is you ask the question, and when AI is in its omni mode, it will look at all these people, and it will, based on how many views they have, it will figure out who are the most significant contributors. That way it's not, that way we kind of throw out the outliers. We throw out the crazies, okay? And it starts to focus in on this handful of about 100 people who have basically shaped culture and shaped society and philosophy throughout the course of history. And some of the names I've just listed. And so there'll be the most powerful religious figures and so on. And there are a few political figures and a lot of philosophers. And then it will take that and it will find out what is it they all agreed on. The greatest minds that ever lived all have this one, and I used to call it singularity until now they're using singularity as a different thing, meaning that's when AI becomes conscious. Before that, my version was there's this one point that 95 out of 100 of the greatest minds of all time would all agree that this is the best answer to your question. Right. And so I use AI to find the best human response from the greatest minds, and then it comes back and says, this is the answer to your question, and plus it then goes on and tells you how to use it. And it says, and this is how you can apply it to your life. Here are the ways that you can use it. So it's not just giving you information, but it's actually giving you a plan to follow. And then I thought, now let's have some fun. Because I've got the Omni mode, which of course is the most powerful scenario, but I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could single out any one of these individuals? What if I wanted to be coached by, do you have a biography or a greatest all-time inspirational figure?
It switched throughout my life. I remember when I first started getting into personal growth, I might have been 16, and I started reading Eckhart Tolle, and then I found that to be
the pain body of ego, and yeah.
And then I got into I guess I got into like a lot of business biographies. So then I'd read like these massive tomes like Snowball by Warren Buffett, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, and that's when I was going really hard into like different entrepreneurial ventures and really discovering who I was as a millennial entrepreneur. Which also I stole that term from you because I guess I am a millennial entrepreneur, so I could.
That's my number one coaching clients. Our average age 32. Millennial entrepreneurs, that's my number one coaching client, which I love because they're like, you guys are just like hungry. You're not like, I already know all the answers. You're like, come on, tell me more and more.
Painfully aware of how ignorant I am to most things. Like I used to think I knew a lot because I'd read like hundreds of books and I'd like keep up on like, the pulse of society or whatever's happening in the culture of the world. And like I've written a whole bunch, and then I've explored my own thoughts, but there's an infinite amount of knowledge that I'll never be able to consume.
Yeah. It's the more I know how little I know, and I'm still in that same. I've read, I know it's over 2,000 books in our field, and of course most of them end up saying the same thing. I've read 13 books. In fact, I'm looking at them right now. 13 books on happiness, And they all say pretty much the same thing. I'll tell you that the best one, let me grab opinion. This is my favorite book on happiness by Ben Shahar, however you say his name, Tal Ben Shahar. he taught this in Harvard, but you notice it says happier. I love it. What he was saying is, who knows what happiness is? Nobody knows for sure what happiness is, but we all know what it is to be happier. I was this happy, but now I'm this happy. But they all, eventually, there's an overlap where everyone starts teaching pretty much the same principles in different ways. And so after reading enough, I actually started to slow down the number of books. Now I don't read books anymore. It's news feeds, because books are obsolete by the time they come out these days. And so it's, what's the greatest new study? And so I read a lot of studies that came out today. Just came out in psychology, or New England Journal of Medicine, or whatever it is.
Are studies out that often? Like, are they out literally every day? There's a new study, like,
almost
pretty quickly about happiness.
Yeah. There's studies going on all the time, and so I've got all of my news feeds set up so that it's always bringing me everything in that field. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you who the Final Four were on during college basketball week. I couldn't. There's certain things like, you know what, I don't have the bandwidth, but I know, this thing just came out. But taking it back to what I got OmniCoach set up, so you could be coached by Eckhart Tolle, by Jesus, by Moses, by anyone, because anything that they've ever said that's been published to the internet. The AI is designed to go in and do two things. One, there may be an actual word-for-word quote about the topic, about your question. They may have actually answered it directly, and boom, there it is. Or if not, it will extrapolate. It'll say, okay, they've said this and this and this. This is their philosophical belief. This is, for instance, they're clearly a nonviolent, so their solution is going to be a nonviolent solution. And it'll say, so-and-so would most likely say, and then it will tell you. And so you can be coached by any individual that you can think of who has any kind of presence on the internet. And so once I got that one, that started to be fun. And I thought, oh my God, I could take this to another level. It can also be fictitious characters. My daughter tested it out before we published it. She immediately went to asked Katniss Everdeen, who's the protagonist of the movie Hunger Games. She was the star of Hunger Games. She said, how important is family when it comes to our happiness? And it came right back, she asked Katniss, came right back and said, family's everything. I mean, I sacrificed my life to save my sister. And it gave quotes from her. And it came back and it said, what if you have, if you don't have family, what's the point of it? And she's being coached by, and she calls me up and she's got all of her college friends and they're screeching on the phone going, oh my God. So you can be coached by SpongeBob SquarePants using this system.
I imagine I'd actually learn a lot about validating yourself and living in your own happy world as a SpongeBob SquarePants mentee.
Oh, that's funny. Yes, well said. Or Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
In fact, there's a book. I have it. I don't, because I've just moved into this new place and I don't have my books all up yet. But it's called The Tao of Pooh. It's a brilliant book. This author took all the characters from Pooh Corner, and he started to realize that each one of these characters exemplifies a certain character trait and certain philosophical lifestyle. And there's, Rabbit, there's your one who's just always in a hurry, everything's urgent. And, there's Piglet, who's always worried about everything. And then there's Eeyore, why bother? And so he's your nihilist. And Pooh, who's it'll all be okay, whatever, I'm just going to enjoy my day, it'll all work out. And he's that one in the middle. And so, but it teaches Taoism using the Pooh Corner characters. And then he has the Tay of Piglet, which is another one. Anyhow, so there's that.
So there's a question I like to ask a lot of my guests, and it's, was there a moment where you looked at your work and you thought to yourself, this is way bigger than just me now.
Yeah, yeah. That, in fact, that's when, as I mentioned, when I was in my 20s and I was really benefiting from all of these insights and from this understanding of consciousness and the human psyche, and I started thinking, wow, the whole world needs this. It occurred to me, especially around the early 1980s, I produced and in fact, one of those Emmys is from this. It was a program that was eventually called Dad Had a Bad Day. Before that, it was Angry Words, because it was about the power of psychological abuse. See, we hear about child abuse, and we hear about or spousal abuse or child abuse, and you think about, the broken arm or the black eye. Well, a kid will heal from a broken arm in 6 weeks, but you break his heart, and he'll spend the rest of his life trying to reconcile, trying to figure out that he's okay by a parent who's convinced him that he's a loser, a lost cause. And so that was the point where I started thinking I could use these tools, these skills, to create awareness and maybe raise funds. And so the first one I did was on child abuse, and it was based on my own life. I used to hide in the attic. So that was the original title, was The Attic. I used to hide in the attic from my stepdad. And I had a whole room built up there, and I had snacks hidden and things so that I could stay up there for hours on end without him finding me. And so it's about this kid hiding in the attic. And then we eventually turned it into a music video and a fundraiser. And one day I was in my office, and I hear all this rustling at the door, and there's all this noising and a bunch of noise like kids playing or something. And I'm looking out the window, and there's this big van, like a bus. And there are all these kids coming down the aisle singing a song, as it turned out that they'd written for me. And they have this big banner. I still have it. We just ran across it in a box, and a big plate of cookies. And the head of it was the Child Crisis Center right here in the Phoenix area. And she came in and just had all these kids lined up. Normally you don't see the actual children in shelters. That's pretty rare. So she got permission to do this. And so my room's full of all these children. And as they were singing this song, she came up, and I used to not be able to tell the story without crying, and I've done it so many times I can finally keep a straight face. But she whispers into my ear, maybe I can't, I want you to look into the eyes of every one of these children and look at these smiles. She said, if it weren't for the beds the wing we built and the beds we put in there, using the money you raised for us, every one of these children would have been sent back to their abusive homes, because the Child Protective Services couldn't keep up. At this point, there were so many abuse victims that they couldn't keep up with them all, and these kids were being sent back because this was a private organization, not federally or state funded. And after she left, and I got it. I was like, oh shit. How might these children turn out now? How might their lives be affected because I created this thing and it was so effective? And at that point I was like, okay, that's it. And I started shifting from all commercial production to only doing projects that were change the world stuff, that were create awareness, and it wasn't lucrative. So I wasn't able to sustain it indefinitely because I was doing it and volunteering and offering it up, St. Jude's and UNICEF. I'm creating these things, and they're making a difference. So I was making my money doing the work, commercial work, and doing my my coaching and my books and my seminars, so I could feed that. But there's no question, I've never regretted it. I've always known that at that point that there's nothing I can do for myself personally. Anything I do will pale in comparison to the sense of purpose and the sense of relevance that you get from reaching out to the lives of others. So,
right. And so, usually my interviews last about an hour, but I've been enjoying the conversation a lot. But I want to ask, what is the most powerful transformation or shift you've seen someone make?
I could tell you right off the bat, it was probably my own. I don't know that I've seen any greater. So at a certain point in my life, I realized that that I did not share the same values with. I was married for a period, and she and I didn't have the same values, and we stayed married for like 20 years. So it's not like so I gave it a shot. I kept saying, I've got the skills. I'm Mark Fournier. I can fix this. I can fix this. And until I realized, some people are just not compatible. It doesn't necessarily mean that one is right or one is wrong, but water and oil, you can shake that bottle as hard as you want, but eventually the oil separates from the water. And so we weren't able to.
Even if you use starch to emulsify it, if you leave it
yeah.
alone, it's not going to.
All right, yeah. And chemistry wasn't my favorite course, so I wouldn't know that.
I don't know it from chemistry. I actually know it from cooking Italian food. Like
I love it. All right, so in our case, I didn't have an emulsifier handy, and so I went through what turned into a 5.5-year divorce. Some people don't want you to get divorced, and so it can be made very challenging. And so during that 5.5-year divorce, eventually it became so litigious that I couldn't keep doing my work any longer. We were in court like 3 times a week, and when we weren't in court, we were answering derogatories and filling out so much paperwork. And so by the end of this 5.5 years, I had gone from being worth a great deal of money from all the work I had done, and we had homes in various areas around the country, and a beautiful home in Paradise Valley, and beautiful home in Long Grove, Illinois. And by the time this was over, I'd lost everything. So I was almost 60 years old, and here I was, and I've been on my own since I was 17, that alcoholic father thing and all that. So I moved out and moved into a car when I was 17 years old. I bought my first house when I was 19. So I had always had houses and cars, and I was a pretty independent guy. And so here I was, homeless, without a home, without money. I was actually $250,000 still in debt to lawyers at almost 60. And right at that point, still going at it because I was fighting for custody. And in Illinois, mom always gets custody. It's just the way they don't split custody. And I was trying to break that rule. And I was like, no, these kids need to be with me. And so during that period, of course, I was learning and growing the whole time. Because again, like I said, I learned some of my greatest lessons from adversity. In fact, probably all of them. And so I got to this point where we're about to go into a 30-day trial, the final hearing trial. And I couldn't pay lawyers anymore, and the judge takes me into chambers and just says, listen, it doesn't matter what I award you, nothing matters. You're going to end up, they'll just appeal. You're never going to step foot in your homes again. I think you look like you've aged 20 years. It's just time to get on with your life. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had cancer, stage 3, and I just finally thought, all right, I'm going to just let this go. And so I walked out, signed the papers, canceled the hearing, and walked away from everything. Homes, savings, money, the kids, saying, I'll come back and fight another day when I can. Eventually, I got what every dad gets in Illinois, every other weekend and Wednesday afternoon. That's all a dad gets, and it was like I finally just had to accept that. But the transitional moment was right there, just as everything's signed over. I'm moving into this little dinky apartment so I can be near the kids for the first time here. Like I said, had my own home since I was 19, and I've got no money, and the apartment smelled, and my business is shut down because I hadn't been able to run it, and I've got cancer, and they tell me we need to operate immediately, and so they get me in the day before Christmas because all the doctors are going on vacation, and they say, we can't wait. We've realized that you've had this for over a year, but nobody acted on it, and so here I am on Christmas Day. All of my family were all, because nobody knew I had cancer, so they had all these big events going on everywhere else. I was in Chicago, but my family was in Salt Lake. There were nobody near. All my friends were either with huge families or they'd left the country. A lot of Jewish friends left the country for Christmas, and I was alone on Christmas Day, and they'd cut me from here to here. The scar, it healed up great, but I'm cut from here to here so they could go into all this stuff. And they didn't know if they'd gotten it all because it's stage 3. That means it's left the margins. And so I am potentially dying of cancer. Very strong chance that I'm going to end up with throat cancer, like, I forgot the actor that just passed away with Top Gun, Iceman. It'll come back in a minute.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, Val Kilmer with his and they take out my voice box. This is what I do for a living. How am I going to do this if I can't speak? I can't do seminars or coaching. It was a very dark day. I've lost my kids. I've lost my home. I've lost my money, my income, and now I may be about to lose my life. And while I was laying there, I'm just laying there. And I turn on television and watching a couple of Christmas specials and Rudolph, and I just start thinking, well, but if I don't die, what can I do now? What would I do next? See, we think about worst case scenario as if, well, worst case scenario, like as if you get there and then the world ends that day or you die that day. But that's not how it works. It's worst case scenario, and then now it's Monday. Now what will you do? And then Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And so worst case scenario, it's just part of a journey. It's a blip. And so I thought, okay, so my worst fear that I could imagine, dying of cancer and losing my kids, my house, my money, my career, everything, it just happened. And I'm still here. Oh, okay. Well, all right, if I don't die, I guess I'll start doing this and this, and I'll finish that book, and I'll publish this thing, and I'll go ahead and start letting everybody know I'm back and get on the circuit, and then I'll do that. And you know what? I have learned so much from these last 5.5 years that I was here in terms of my knowledge and understanding of the human condition. I'm here now. I'd never had a moment of depression. I couldn't work with depressed clients. Now I've had depression. There's all these experiences I'd never had before that I've had them all now. And I'm thinking, I am so much further than I was before. I could make such a difference. I could help so many more people on such a deep level. And oh my gosh, I could do this and this and this. And as that all hit me on that Christmas morning, I thought, well, what is there to be afraid of? After your greatest fear has come and you've experienced your greatest fear and moved on to the next day, there's nothing left to fear. And in that moment, my whole life became, I'm going to live. I don't know how long I'll be here, but my God, I'm going to live, and I will never, ever let fear stop me from anything ever again. Because how bad could it be? Once I have, no matter what it is, I'm going to find a way to turn it into something else. Ultimately, everything does always work out one way or another. Doesn't mean you won't have a couple of stops along the way. And sure enough, that's what happened. As my life turned around, I turned around and I got up to this place, and it's like, holy cow, the things that I'm the most proud of, my greatest strengths, all came during the worst period of my life. And so when you hear of people like Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie and these others who say they hit rock bottom, and we all say the same thing, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So if hitting rock bottom is the best thing that'll ever happen to you, what are you afraid of? Go live your life. Take some risks. Hang it out there. Make a difference. How bad could it be? More importantly, how good could it be? Because where every worst case scenario, there's a best case scenario. What would that look like?
Powerful. Wow. Okay. That was amazing. So I like to end every interview off with a lightning round. So I'm going to just say the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you the question. What's one belief you've completely changed your mind about?
That I have problems. I recognize that a problem is just an unexpected outcome. And it's not a problem, it's an unexpected outcome. It's just things turn out differently than the way you thought they had. And that doesn't make it a problem, that just makes it something different. And so I changed the belief that I have that there's any such thing as a problem for me. They're just opportunities I hadn't expected. I know it's a cliche, but that reverse, that whole concept for me is I no longer have them.
What's a daily habit that you swear by?
What's a what?
A daily habit.
A daily
swear by.
habit. Yeah, it's actually every morning. First thing I do before I get up, other than maybe I'll run off to the bathroom and go pee and come right back, but I lay there in bed, I smile because it's turned out that smiling actually generates endorphins. It generates dopamine. It puts us in a better state. It goes either way. If you're in a happy place, it makes you smile. Well, we're conditioned so that when we smile, it generates that chemistry. So I smile and I start immediately thinking about everything in my life that's amazing, that's incredible. And there's this and there's that. And like now I have this new house and I've got these great views of the mountain and I've got that and that. And I think about something cool that happened recently that I'm really happy about and something cool that I have to work on, something coming up. And then I go to and something special that I have going on today. And so I do that all. It takes like 2-3 minutes. And so I create an elevated state while I'm lying there in bed. Before my feet hit the ground, I'm already at a 10. And then my day just goes from there. And that is a daily, everything, no exceptions, habit, routine.
When you feel off, what's your go-to reset?
I take a deep breath. It's a trigger word for me. I have my Mary, if she sees me getting off, she says, breathe. So I take a deep breath. And as I'm letting it go, I say, just let it go. Let it go. I love my life. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I love my life. I just go into this wonderful place and I take off from there. And it's very effective.
Biggest myth about personal development?
Biggest myth about personal development? Probably that reading books about personal development will significantly improve your life. I stopped writing books because reading a book that they then put down and 6 months later they don't even remember if they read it, that's not how you change your life. Even with my coaching, I tell them, listen, we're going to talk for 75 minutes once a week, and yeah, I'll blow your mind a couple of times with some cool insights, but that's not what's going to change your life. It'll be the exercises and assignments I give you all week long. You're going to take this and you're going to apply it to your life all week long. It is living it that'll change your life, not reading about it.
If you had a personal mantra tattooed somewhere, what would it say?
Yeah, you've already heard it, and I'll say it again because if they haven't written it down by now, they really need to. I'm okay. I'm not perfect. No one is, and that's okay. I'm doing my best to be my best, and that's enough.
You're on a silent retreat for a week. What do you miss first?
Pizza. No, I'm kidding. Silent retreat for a week. A silent retreat. Yeah. It's probably just literally, I'm a super social person. If you can't tell, right? It's having somebody, if it's a silent retreat, I'm thinking that I can't talk to anybody, which is why I was so scared.
I can imagine you maybe like passing notes and trying to make, or like doing like a lot of gestures.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So if let's say I'm not
way.
alone. Yeah. It's the ability to really communicate on a deep level, verbally.
One word to describe the human journey.
Growth. It's all, if you could just let it be, I'm just here just to see how much I can learn. How far can I go? How much can I grow as a being during this lifetime?
What do you want to be remembered for? Not just as a coach, but as a person.
Compassion. Somebody who cared, who really, truly, deeply cared. As the Dalai Lama said when there were some folks who were picketing him over his religion, right? His religion, being a Buddhist, and he just said, he says, I'm not a Buddhist. He says, no. He says, Buddhist, that's not my religion. Well, what is your religion? He said, kindness. Kindness is my religion. And I was standing there while he said this, and it was great. It was just the idea of bringing compassion to this world, because if the whole world were filled with that, think about it, enlightened beings. If the world were filled with compassionate, enlightened beings, the problems would be gone, because almost all of our issues on this planet are a result of some form of abuse. Drug addicts and so on, self-abuse, abusing ourselves, abusing others, abusing the planet, abusing animals. And one thing that enlightened beings have in common is they don't abuse. They don't abuse, and truly enlightened not only don't abuse, but they don't allow abuse within their sphere of influence. And if we could eliminate all forms of abuse, that'd be the end of it. We wouldn't be worrying about all the things that are happening because they're all, again, stem from that. And so it would be this idea of just having true compassion, not just for people who are kind or nice to you, but and I'll give one quick example, and because it really drives it home to people, and they go, "Oh, okay, so that's what compassion really looks like." I was in a grocery store, and there was this woman, and admittedly, she was not physically somebody that you'd be drawn to. She didn't care for herself, and stretchy pants, and she's overweight, and her hair is sticking out everywhere, and she had a hold of this little girl who's probably maybe 2.5, 3 years old, and by the arm, and she's shaking her, and she's yelling at her, and she's just so in her face and intense. And I was in the checkout line, and everybody's looking like, "Oh my God, that's just," and you could tell everybody just wanted to go kick her ass. And all I could think of as I'm looking at this woman is I went straight to compassion because I was raised in an abusive environment. But in order to heal, I had to stop being a victim. And I needed to start looking at my abusive stepfather and his abusive father and start looking at who were they being and what happened. And all I could think was to walk over and just touch her on the back of her shoulder. And I said very quietly, "It looks like you're having a really tough day here." And she looked, because she jumped for a minute, and then she heard what I said, and she saw the compassion in my eyes, and she just started crying. She goes, "Oh my God, my husband's leaving me, and I got this and this and that, and they're taking my car, and they repossessed my car, and and blah blah blah." And she was having a bad day. And I just kind of put my arm around her and just kind of gave her a hug. And I know everybody in the store was like going, "All right, this is some crazy shit, man." I wouldn't have thought to do that.
You almost shattered the matrix in their brain for a second. You're just like you saw past the abusive behavior. You saw past the walls that she was putting up, and then saw into the core.
Yeah, and it all comes from the concept. And I tell this to my clients. I say, "Listen, it's human nature to judge." I said, "But I can suspend judgment." "Well, how can you do that?" I say, "It's because I know something that most people don't realize, and that's that everyone's behavior is totally appropriate for their perceptions, their programs, their conditioning. If I had the identical conditioning and programs that you have, I would do the exact thing you just did. Because that's really, ultimately, we're just acting out our programs." And so because I'm aware of that, I knew that it wasn't that this was an evil woman, that this is a woman whose programs are causing her to behave in a destructive manner. And so as she was saying all this stuff, she just, she breaks down, and then she immediately starts coming back, and she looks at her daughter and she hugs her and she goes, "I'm so sorry, honey, I'm so sorry." And she's saying to me, "I would normally never do that. I'm so sorry, honey." And then I just said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a phone number." And because I worked with shelters and so on, and I connected her with an abuse agency, and I said, they're going to help you, and I want you to call this number, and they're going to help you get through this. And she wouldn't let me go. She's like hugging me like, thank you. She's crying, and I walked out of there thinking, and that was the first time that I had ever, to that degree, experienced this idea of this quantum empowerment, where it was now had become a part of who I was. I didn't sit down and strategize from a psychological perspective. What is the most effective way of dealing with this? I just went straight to compassion on my own. It just happened. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's working. And that's all that mastery is that we just keep doing it again and again until it happens on its own. We've mastered driving. First time you ever drove a car, you're like clutching the steering wheel, and every little turn was like life or death. And now people are, one hand on the wheel, and they're on the phone, and they're changing the baby's diapers next to them, because it's been a form of mastery. Well, you can master metacognition. You can master these principles, but you just got to apply them every day, again. And you look at life like this. It's not about this thing, whatever this thing is. This is just another opportunity for me to practice these principles. So I get another chance to practice. Sometimes you'll get it right, sometimes not so much. It's all right. Start again tomorrow.
Mark, you've been an incredible guest. I love hearing all your stories. You're a phenomenal storyteller. You're a near enlightened human being. I think maybe only the Dalai Lama and a few select others may be up there, according to you, because you've actually met them, you've interviewed them, seen them behind the scenes, and thank you for being on The Moment It Clicked. Where can guests learn more about you?
Certainly my coaching site is mark at Fournier Inc. I'm sorry, Mark. Yeah, no, that's my email address. Mark, my coaching site is thelimitlesscoach.com. Easier to remember and spell, thelimitlesscoach.com. And from there, it takes you to other things. But if you want to just have access to my media, usually the best thing is Mark Fournier Presents. If you just go to your search engine and type in Mark Fournier Presents, it'll then take you to LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram or whatever else is out there. I'm a late bloomer when it comes to social media because I'm a boomer. And I was like, I don't need all that. I'll just reach them through conventional methods. And of course, eventually, so it's like, okay, I have my little team. It's like, all right, guys, like this will be posted on our platforms. And so so it's starting to populate and fill up with interviews and things of this nature. And they'll probably see plenty of things that way. Of course, since you mentioned OmniCoach, that's easy. Just go to your app store and type in OmniCoach, and it's free, so anyone can access it. I did it because I wanted to contribute to the folks who maybe couldn't afford to hire me as a coach. It's maybe the second best thing. So just OmniCoach in your app store. And another one that I'm kind of proud of, it's a simple app, and it's called Life Balance Test. And to go to because it's a 2-minute thing, you fill it out and it'll tell you where your life is in balance, where it's out of balance. And wherever your scores are the lowest, focus on that. Let that be a major priority for you, is to bring those numbers up so that you have a person who has a scores of 5 in all 10 areas of their life is much happier than a person who has a 10 in 5 areas and a 0 in 5. So you want to get that balance into your life. So that's another possibility. I think once they get to Mark Fournier Presents or any of these, they kind of tend to lead you to the others, and then I think they can bounce around.
Sensational. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been The Moment It Clicked.